We move closer to game three, the pivotal game three in this best of seven series between the Bucks and the Indiana Pacers. Some interesting comments from Tyrese Haliburton, some very intriguing comments from Brian Windhorst on the latest Hoop Collective podcast, and some more thoughts Camille and I have on adjustments and lineup changes to be made. That comes your way next on Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia. You can hear me on the Bucks Radio Network, joined as always by Camille Davis, who you can find on the Technical Foul podcast and every other podcast imaginable when it comes to football, especially this time of years. As you listen to this, the NFL draft, later on tonight as we get started here. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day and for checking out the Locked On Bucks newsletter. You can still sign up for free at lockedondaily.com. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. It is an NBA and a Bucks-specific NBA show, Camille, but did I get that right? That's how out of the loop I've been with everything but basketball the past few years. Does the draft start night one Thursday?
Night one Thursday in Green Bay. That is right.
I knew that part. I knew that part. So we got a lot off our chest and got into it in terms of rotations, lineups, you name it, adjustments the Bucks need to make on yesterday's show. And I was telling you earlier today, yeah, you know what? I don't know. Maybe it was just a heat of the moment thing, but I have kind of changed my mind on some of the things I said earlier, not to the level of, okay, nothing needs to change, just play better. But some of the personnel things that we kicked around, I have kind of gone back and forth on. What about you? Everything that we talked about in terms of lineup changes, starting there. Have you reconsidered anything or everything I suggested yesterday, that's what we should go with?
Yeah, I think I'm feeling even stronger about how changes need to be made to that starting lineup. I saw a tweet from Brian Sampson, aka Bucks Film Room. He wrote an article for Forbes, and he called out the fact that the Kuzma, Prince, Giannis, Brook lineup had a plus 6.8 net rating in the regular season, but pointed out the fact that against the Pacers in March, they were outscored by 11 points in 31 minutes. Mentioned the fact that in game one, that group was outscored by 15 points in 17 minutes. In game two, that group was outscored by 9 points in 16 minutes. And just saying, like, overall, yeah, that lineup worked. But as we've talked about, how series can need different things for different people and how different players might be more useful in certain series than others. Just seeing the numbers called out that way made me think of like, okay, yeah, something needs to change with that starting group just because it's not working. And in the playoffs here, it's first to four. Pacers are already at the 2. I don't feel like at this point it's like a panic move to make a change, but something that just needs to be done because you have enough film and tape to say, this is not working the way that we intended it to against this group.
Yeah. So we mentioned quite a few names on the show yesterday, and those changes that we kicked around and discussed whether or not they should be made. Is there anyone we didn't mention? And I think it's pretty clear there's 2 names that I know we did not mention, but is there anyone we didn't mention that you've reconsidered of, you know what, maybe this is the break in case of emergency type of player that they need?
You're trying to get me to talk about Andre Jackson Jr.
I'm trying to bait you into talking about Andre Jackson Jr. without mentioning his name, or Pat Connaughton, if you want to go down that road.
Which is, by the way, I find it hilarious, the conversation around Pat Connaughton now, given where it was to start the season of like, well, why don't we just give Pat a try at this point? How people have come back around to that. Dropping 40 does something.
Somebody called in to the postgame show on the radio and brought that up. Why aren't we playing Pat Connaughton? And I mean, I didn't even know how to process it, that holy cow, we're here. And even reference the guy just scored 43 points. Like, you don't want to see what he can do. Like, wow, it's come to this. Okay.
Yeah, it has. Which again, I mean, the Andre Jackson conversation is, I think, worth having, just because we have seen him at points in this season. Like the NBA Cup game is one that people point to a lot in the work that he did holding SGA. We saw him last year in the Pacers series, more out of necessity for the Bucks at that point, being thrown in there, having to play in this series before. So the question comes up of, if you're having some struggles with your defense, why not go ahead and break that glass? Because honestly, even Sims getting like the 8 minutes or so a game that he's gotten so far has been feeling kind of like, okay, break in case of emergency. Look, we need that versatile big out here to kind of soak up some of these minutes that maybe initially we're going to go to Brook Lopez. So I do wonder if maybe you see a little bit more Sims, and if maybe Andre Jackson Jr. is that guy who gets the call back up. But do you think it's more realistic for Andre Jackson Jr. to enter into the rotation, or for Ryan Rollins to just kind of get back into it? He already
I
made his
think
debut without Dame in the lineup.
I think Ryan Rollins, and it's going to be taken as Andre Jackson Jr. hates. I think we've both been accused of that this season. But I just think Ryan Rollins, number one, is already in the rotation, and Ryan Rollins is going to offer you more offensively than Andre Jackson Jr. And I think they're in the same ballpark, at least defensively, where I think they give you a lot of the same things. And I mean, it's a very small sample size, but Ryan Rollins was the best option you had in terms of guys that could stay in front of and capably defend Tyrese Haliburton in game one. So I would like to see more of that. One of the challenges with this Pacers team is the personnel and the matchups there. And we talked about how the Bucks stack up against the Indiana Pacers, but man, you tell me what you think about this. It just feels like this isn't an ideal opponent for Dame to come back from 35 days off and have to deal with getting your legs back, getting back, knocking off the rust, getting back in the swing of things. And then, oh, by the way, Andrew Nembhard is going to take you on defensively and try to take you out of the game.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation to walk back into, because the Pacers are a team too that like to be physical. They like to pick up full court. They like to run. So somebody who is coming back to playing ball, who's had a month off for a reason where he couldn't even really hit the court or do anything like that, it's going to be a tough matchup to come to, because they're going to make sure you got your track shoes on and you got to come out here running with these guys, also playing physical. So yeah, I think that is a difficult situation to walk back into. But I love Dame's attitude about it, with him saying, like, I don't think there's ever going to be a great point for me to try to re-enter into this series. Kind of got to rip the Band-Aid off and jump into it. And honestly, doing it in game 2 with them having 2 days off before game 3, I think that was probably the best decision, because come this weekend, you only get a game or day in between game 3 and game 4. So a little bit more recovery time, kind of get used to it, and then get ready to have a must-win game at home for game 3. So yeah, I think it's a difficult place to come back to, but there's probably not going to be a better time to try to do it. And you couldn't pick a different opponent. So it was your only option at this point.
Yeah. And, we talked yesterday about you just can't have those stretches, even if it's brief minutes where there's no Dame or Giannis on the floor.
Yes.
You certainly can't load Dame's minutes into this, but in game 3, I would look for getting Damian Lillard on the floor as much as you can when Andrew Nembhard isn't on the floor, to try to get him at least going and see the ball go through the net, start to get into his sets a little bit more and get that rhythm back, so that, once you can't avoid it for the whole game, he's going to play 35 or so minutes in the case of Nembhard, but just get some of those minutes for Dame to kind of help him get back up to speed here. But yeah, the Ryan Rollins, I am very curious, like because as we talked about, all these lineup changes that we've proposed and talked about, well, it's got to come at the expense of someone. And I know in the eyes of a lot of Bucks fans, well, that's easy. Just stop playing this guy and this guy and this guy. I don't anticipate that happening. And that's the challenge with especially a guy like Ajax, but even Ryan Rollins, and trying to get him back into this rotation. I think there's a couple of clear guys that stand out where you at least say, we got to monitor these minutes, and maybe the opportunity comes here, but it's a difficult task, but at this point it's a necessary one, as you're in the spot that you're currently in. So I do want to talk about some of the things that we discussed yesterday in terms of, well, how should you change your starting lineup? Because there's one thing that I went back and forth on and ultimately changed my mind on, and some of those lineup numbers to throw out there, albeit the smallest of sample sizes when we're talking about 2 playoff games, but a trend that has not changed for the Bucks. We'll dig into that conversation next. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. You can dive into hundreds of premium titles like EA Sports College Football 25 or Call of Duty Black Ops 6 as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It is gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, you can watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and so much more. And you can play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. Already have a console? Well, that's easy. A Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take yours or your kids' games wherever it is you plug in. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller, both required, available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and Fire TV Cube. All right, so these lineup numbers here, Camille. We saw 33 possessions with the new starting lineup in game 2 of Dame in place of Ryan Rollins, and then TP, Kyle Kuzma, Giannis, and Brook Lopez.
Mm-hmm.
And again, 33 possessions. So this is a very, very small sample size. What would you guess the Bucks' net rating in those possessions was? Ballpark number.
Ballpark, I would guesstimate like a -8. Worse?
Oh, yeah. A negative. Well, here's the even more startling part. That group posted a defensive rating of 135.3. The Pacers had an effective field goal percentage of 71.4 against that lineup. Yep. They had a negative 23.2 net rating.
18. I'm like, put a 1 in front of it. Still wouldn't have been enough.
All right, let's do this. So basically same amount of possessions. This was slightly more. The starters from game 1. So swap out Damian Lillard for Ryan Rollins. What do you think the net rating was for that group?
This might be the real negative 18.
No, you got to keep going up. This one
what?
was
okay,
even worse.
They were worse than the group with Dame.
Yeah, a negative 48.1 net rating.
Goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me ask you this too. What was the defensive rating for that unit out of curiosity, if you have it?
For the one with Rollins?
Yeah.
140.
Okay, so one thing I did notice in game 2, the Bucks did a lot more switching on defense. Game 1, they were really trying to stay connected, fight over the screen. They just didn't do a great job of that. So game 2 saw a lot more switching, which I think is probably the path forward for them. So maybe that was part of why you saw better results, but also with them looking to switch more, the questions come about again of who are the best guys to throw out there, then if that is the defensive plan that you're planning to use going forward, because we saw some problems with the guys they're looking to hunt Brook Lopez, trying to get him on the perimeter for sure. So switch heavy. Which guys are you wanting out there? Taurean Prince, another name that's been thrown out there by some Bucks fans, as well as someone like, let's watch the minutes that we see with Taurean Prince out here. But I do wonder too if the change in the defense helped the second unit or the second grouping that we saw in game 2 a little bit more than game 1. Clearly, they both still need far more help to be sustainable going forward. But I do wonder if they found something there a little bit to kind of keep moving forward with.
Yeah. So here's the tricky part is any lineup with Giannis on the floor in this series. I mean, the Bucks are drawn dead, period, but they're a negative 20 net rating with Giannis on the floor in this series. And that has nothing to do with how Giannis has played. That's what he's been surrounded with, is the story there. You got a lot of positive lineups, albeit very, very small samples here, with combinations we haven't seen much of, and frankly, we need to see more of. But in terms of lineups where you've played quite a few possessions here, the most that we've seen, I'll just say this. So if I told you the lineup that Giannis has been featured in the most in this series, I'm not going to make you name all four guys, but if I told you it was Giannis and Bobby Portis in the front court, who would you think the other three players are?
Gary Trent's one of them for sure. I would assume AJ Green's in that category.
Okay.
And my first inclination would be able to go with the Gary Trent Jr., like that bench Giannis lineup. So I'm gonna just go with that and see how that one lands.
Wait, who was the last one? Gary Trent, AJ Green, and who?
Kevin Porter Jr.
Yeah, you nailed it. That's the group that's played the most possessions together. They're a negative 12.5 net rating. In terms of groups that have played double-digit possessions together, we've seen this lineup half as many possessions, and it's positive, a plus 2.6 in the net rating category. Bobby Portis, Giannis, Gary Trent is in there. Who do you think the other two are?
Is Kyle Kuzma one of them? Because he got a lot of playing time.
Kyle Kuzma is one of them, yes.
Yeah. Because they went with the Kuz, Giannis, Bobby, Gary Trent Jr., and then who was that fifth guy out there with them last night or in game 2?
On the right track.
It's not
this
AJ
is the group
Green.
that closed the game.
And I'm blanking on who the fifth person was right now. Oh, Dame.
Damian Lillard. That fivesome has a positive net rating. So all 20 of those possessions came in game 2. I mean, I think what we've seen here is, if we go back to yesterday's conversation about the starting lineups and changes to make, we both kind of, I don't remember if you said both of these guys as well. I said, you know what, maybe it's time to just take Brook Lopez and Kyle Kuzma or Taurean Prince out of the out of the lineup, not rotation. Mm-hmm. I've kind of gone back on that. I think you still have to start Brook Lopez. But I would make the change to, honestly, either AJ Green, or I would also think, as we said, how do you make room for this guy? I would think long and hard about Ryan Rollins starting at the 2 guard next to Dame Lillard, keeping Brook Lopez out there. You got to monitor and watch how things are going in the flow of it. Maybe it's an early substitution to bring in Bobby. But I just think you need one of those guard types, either AJ Green or Ryan Rollins. AJ is much better at getting over screens. Ryan Rollins, obviously the same, and he has that wingspan. I think you need that defensive help and quickness on the perimeter next to Damian Lillard, more so than you get from Taurean Prince. And it's not just the defense, it's everything else. Ryan Rollins is, I suppose you could say, he's a hesitant shooter at times, but he's going to take the open looks, and that's what you need. You need somebody that isn't going to be gun shy either. That's going to give you defense and give you the ability to space the floor and knock down shots. So at this point, I know it's probably going to draw the ire of a lot of our listeners and viewers, but I've gone back on it where, you know what, I would keep Brook in the starting lineup, but it's one of those things of, all right, we got to watch this. So we got to keep an eye on this, and let's just make sure it's not starting to slip away and we don't have to go smaller and lean into some of that quickness.
Okay. So 2 questions with that.
Okay.
One, what made you go back to, like, you know what, actually let's keep Brook in the starting lineup? And then the second question is, if you do reinsert Ryan Rollins into the starting lineup and you keep Brook Lopez there, what would your ideal minute allocation be for the 2 of them if they continue to be starters? So would it be a situation for Brook and maybe Ryan Rollins where it's like you start, but you're still only playing about 15 minutes or so in the game. It's just that your times are going to be to start the game and some point in the second, start the third, whatever the case may be. So like, what's the minute allocation? And then for Brook Lopez, what made you swing back to like, you know what, actually, let's continue to start him? Was it the 4 blocks he had in game 2 where you were just kind of like, you know what, I can see something here?
Good questions, fair questions. I'll give you the answer coming up after this on Locked On Bucks. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game, especially if your team wins and they're not trailing 2-0. You think about every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment. It all feels huge. It is electric in the arena, and with GameTime, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. GameTime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when the demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off moves closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60% on those tickets you're hunting. They also come with all-in pricing, meaning no surprise fees and sticker shock. Once you get to checkout, you can see a panoramic view from your seat as well. When you get to GameTime, what you see is what you pay. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem that code LOCKEDONNBA to score $20 off your first purchase. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Okay, so I think it's a complex answer in terms of the minutes. So I think early in that game yesterday, let's start with Ryan Rollins. It felt like, man, you got to go to Rollins here. Like the turnovers for Kevin Porter Jr. And I think Eric asked Doc about it. Eric named post game too of, when KPJ first arrived, turnovers were an issue. And you talked about that being a non-negotiable. Then it went away and your team was winning at a pretty high rate. And now they've kind of come back in the playoffs and said, yeah, nothing's changed. It's still non-negotiable. The turnovers, some of the shot types as well. And as we talked about that edge that he can play with, it's good and bad. And we've experienced it in the past with Bobby Portis. I think it's a case-by-case basis there of, does Ryan not have it? Okay, let's bring in KPJ and vice versa. So that minute number, I think it fluctuates. With Brook Lopez, what made me change my mind is just blind loyalty, Camille. I mean, there's another thing I'll die on the hill of that now is not the time or place to discuss. But one of the other ones is Brook Lopez is still a very effective player and a useful player. It depends on his environment and what you're surrounding him with, especially on the perimeter. Those block shots that you referenced were certainly a big part of it. But I don't know what the role is for Brook Lopez coming off the bench. The more you started to think about that, like, I don't know about that. Like the way you structure your bench, you want Bobby to be that guy that comes in and gives you that type of energy and scoring. Jericho Sims as well. I think the big thing is you have to just be cognizant of the flow of the game and the pace of the game. And I don't think we can even say, well, this is a 15-minute per game series go forward for Brook Lopez. I think it all depends on the flow of the game. And if this is one that, again, slowish start, the Pacers are getting out and running, you got to go to the bench early, that's a game where it's probably going to be 15 minutes. If you have much better defense, and maybe it's as simple as Ryan Rollins or AJ Green staying in front of their guys, not overhelping and forcing Tyrese Haliburton to take shots, and all of a sudden shots aren't falling for the Pacers, and you're going down and converting on the other end, then it quickly becomes a game where, okay, Brook's going to play 20, 25 minutes or so. So that's why I went back and, you know what, I'd keep that part, but it can't just be, well, this was the substitution pattern during the regular season, and this is the time of the game when we typically bring Brook out, so this is when we're going to do it in the playoffs. It has to be a mind the game type of thing of, nope, not working, don't like the way this is looking, we got to go to it now.
Yeah, a finger on the pulse type of situation. And I think for this Bucks team going forward, especially hearing Doc mention, like, with the slow starts, but we got to change it. We got to change it. What feels like something's going to happen to that starting lineup. For the guys in that Bucks locker room, it has to be a situation where it's like, you can't take this personal here. Like, we're in a situation now where we're in the crunch time. We got to win games. So the leash that you might have in the regular season of, I don't want to rock a guy's confidence, or I want to make sure that we're like, at this point, it's like, we've been watching film. We got 2 games in now. Like,
do you want to win? Do you want to keep playing?
Like, do you want to win in this game here? And if so, like, things are going to have to change. So I do like your point about Brook Lopez, the energy coming off the bench of what that lineup will look like and things of that sort. And I think what's really important for Brook Lopez, to your point, is just if he's out there, the point of attack defense has to be really, really strong. And also keep in mind, too, that if they are going to continue playing that switch heavy defense, they're going to try to hunt for Brook Lopez. So the question is, like, what is your counter to that? Or do you live with that? Like, we talked about turning Tyrese Haliburton into more of a scorer than a facilitator. Do you try to use that as like not like a dummy thing of like, well, we want you to take these shots.
Let's bait him into it, basically.
Yeah, like this is what we're going to give you. If you want to go one-on-one the entire game and try to hunt these mismatches, go ahead. We will live with that. But we're not going to let Nembhard go crazy. We're not going to let Siakam go crazy. So it could work, which is why I continue to have some confidence in this team, because I can see different situations where if the execution is better and the rotations are sharp, the pathway to victory for the Bucks.
Yeah, and I know it's not going to be possible to line it up where it's every single minute, but that's the other thing is if your assignment, outside of that, it doesn't become as big of an issue whenever it's, LOL, Brooks in space on Tyrese Haliburton. It was the breakdowns everywhere else that, okay, now he's got his choice. Does he take Brook Lopez into the paint? Does he spray it out to an open shooter because of overhelp that's coming? That became the problem. And that's where, too, if you got Giannis on the floor with him, you, in theory, have a weak side helper. If you have Kyle Kuzma and Giannis on the floor, you have a weak side helper in Giannis and Kuz, but you have more length there as well to get back into that painted area and disrupt things. And I just think, we're only 2 games in, but I just think what we've seen here in these 2 days off in between games may be huge for the Bucks and Dame, because I think you just have to take a ton of threes in this series, and you need to be hitting shots. You need a secondary scorer that can shoulder a lot of that load, because as great as Giannis has been, this feels like a series where Giannis is much more important defensively than offensively in this series.
Yeah, and if Dame's out there with them, you have someone else who can kind of share that load, which is why my person who I keep saying, like, I want more AJ Green minutes. Put him in the starting lineup, whatever the case may be. I think AJ Green needs to continue to play more because of the ability to shoot the ball. And I'll say this for this Bucks team. They've remained confident themselves in the way by how they're carrying themselves, the way that they're talking to the Pacers when they're on the court. It ain't no front running happening with the Milwaukee Bucks right now. I can tell you that.
Well, speaking of that, Tyrese Haliburton was asked about that chippiness and the chirping that's taken place after game 2.
Just competitors. I think that's what it is. He wants to win. I want to win. It's the highest level. We're in the highest level in the most contentious moment here in the playoffs. He wants to win. I want to win. We want to win. They want to win. So it's just competition at the end of the day. But yeah, we don't have to sit here and act like it's any secret. We don't like them. They don't like us, and that's just what it is. And I think they live for this. We live for this. So I could care less. I'm out here just trying to help my team win games. So there's got to be a little bit of back and forth. There's got to be a little back and forth, but I'm here to win.
My personal plea to everyone, one of my bigger pet peeves in life, Camille, it is not I could care less. If you could care less, it means, it doesn't really bother me. I could care less about it. I couldn't care less about it. I appreciate the answer and to at least acknowledge we don't like them. We know they don't like us. I'm just more curious, where did this stem from?
I feel like last season was really like that catalyst point for these two teams. One, just how often they had to play in the regular season because of the NBA Cup. Then you had like the ball gate situation. You had Haliburton tapping his wrist, during that NBA Cup semifinal.
Well, that's it. It's in the semifinal game with the tapping on the wrist that really seemed to start to agitate the Bucks. But it just this was a rivalry that was born out of nowhere. It was those two incidents early last season.
Yeah, it was a natural occurring rivalry where it was just these two teams playing each other. Situations happened. And then they got into it. Like, even remembering Malik Beasley last year saying like, "Oh, we going to see you guys in the playoffs and it ain't going to be sweet for him."
Was that Chris Haynes that he said that too?
Yes. And spoiler alert, it was sweet for the Pacers then, but hopefully the Bucks can continue to show some fight, and it's not that sweet this season. So, I mean, I like it. Again, that's part of why I wanted to see this series, because of the rivalry that's starting between them. The fan bases are buying into it. A lot of Bucks fans don't like Pacers fans. Pacers fans don't like Bucks fans. So it's always fun to have that level of competition. And for me, someone who doesn't necessarily trash talk a lot, unless someone comes to my door with it, it's also really fun just kind of seeing all the victory laps and whatnot happening. So not only do I have a personal rooting interest in the Bucks, but now a professional one too. So I want this to continue for many, many different reasons.
Yeah, no offense to Tony. I have no problem with him, but it's everyone else around the Indiana Pacers that yeah, it's bordering on site at this point, the way that these first two games have gone. But yeah, I mean, we talked about this the last couple of days now. Some type of change is going to happen to that starting lineup. You can read between the lines and know that from what Doc Rivers said. It's just a matter of, okay, what is the change, or what are the changes that we see here? So leave your thoughts. I'm sure there's going to be a how can you go back to starting Brook Lopez? But
they were cheering for you earlier, like Justin came around. Now they're like,
finally. Who do you think should be starting next to Damian Lillard in the backcourt for the Bucks? Leave your thought in the comments, and we'll dig into it on the next show. Our next show is going to be a preview, as if we haven't done that of sorts already, of Game 3. But we think we're going to be able to rope Frank into this and get his thoughts on Game 2 and what to look for coming up in Game 3. That actually mentioned, not to get off topic here, Camille, you know that NBA Centel parody account that's out there? I want a Chris Haynes parody account, because he puts the B in there, so it's Chris B. Haynes. If somebody just makes Crispy Haynes and puts that out there, the fake news, it's a free idea. Take it and run with it.
See, now they're going to think that you, whenever this account pops up.
No, when it pops up, people are going to assume it's me. It's not me, but yes, it's a free idea for you to take out there. Leave your thoughts on that as well. Leave your thoughts on who should start next to Damian Lillard in the backcourt, and we will get you set for game number 3 on tomorrow's show. For Camille, I'm Justin. We'll talk with you guys once again tomorrow on Locked On Bucks.